facilities first.
Perfect.
All right. Probably good. All right. I'd like to call this meeting of the Facilities Committee to order. Is there any public comment on the agenda? Seeing none, I will turn it over to Mr. Lawley.
Thank you, Mr. Carpenter. Good evening, everyone. We have one item on tonight's agenda, and that is the CES renovation. Mr. Godshaw from Godshaw, Kane O'Rourke will be giving a brief presentation to the board. We just want to let you know that we've had some really productive meetings, and we feel like we've made some really good progress over the last few weeks. And Kevin, if you don't mind, if you could take the stand, please.
So I'll expand a little bit on what Joe said. The meetings that we've been having have been involving district staff, the front office staff, as well as the principal, plus our engineers, both our mechanical, electrical engineer, as well as structural engineers. So we're trying to really scope this thing out and really finalize the layout. I think at this point, I feel pretty good about the layout.
Yeah,
I feel like it's been vetted, and I think that we're in a good position. Somehow I lost my screen. Oh, doesn't matter. I can work off this. So, okay. So this is the lower level of Colonial Elementary. And the last time that we met, I think back in June, there were 2 or maybe 3 schemes that we were looking at. And I think some things were a little bit up in the air. And I think at this point, we've taken what we consider to be the best parts of those schemes and tried to come back with a very specific proposal about how this building can lay out. You'll see that on the lower level, there's the area of yellow. That's essentially the front of the building at your current security desk. Right now, that receptionist is all the way in the back. So you walk the whole length of that lobby. Students going in and out of the gymnasium are using that same cafeteria. Students from the gymnasium who have to use the restroom use that same lobby. So what we're trying to do is push that security point, that receptionist, up front. So you can see that we've condensed that operation into the front of that corridor.
This is doors to go doors that stop system, so that we press and also it wasn't a bank. So something in the auditorium show. But moving the vestibule back gives us a conference and a public tables. There's someone that's waiting for someone again. They're not in school having meetings up. And I know we spoke about receptionists up front, all by herself. Kevin's created a situation there where she can get out, access from interior to other office in there, get behind it. There is an office up front that we're talking about. One of the secretaries, secretary or admin assistants from upstairs working downstairs, and that so students were to come and parent rather than students have their book bag or their lunch, someone would be there from the school to represent. I know it's just hard to see.
But generally, there would be more than one person up there.
So that's a better view. Thank you. Now you can actually see that so you would have the receptionist that we're sitting clear view towards the glass here. To see that, so she could be able to go behind here and they could both. Plus, she has a door. So there's a door for them to connect with each other, and a door for her to get back into.
And if someone were meeting with the principals, they'd theoretically use the front conference rooms. They wouldn't have to walk through the schools.
Yeah. Okay. Just thought that might help because it looks small and not even low.
Yeah, no, that's fine. Actually, I figured out where my cursor is. So one other point is I previously mentioned that students in the gymnasium would go across the lobby to use these restrooms. We're actually going to provide a single occupant toilet room in the reduced gymnasium so that they don't have to leave, as well as a PE office, which is one of the spaces that's up front here. So we'll replicate those two functions in the space back here. The gymnasium gets reduced in size. As you can see, it might be, what, like 3/5 of its original size. But again, this was designed as a junior high school, so the gym is much larger than it needs to be for a 4-5 building. There are 2 PE teachers. One is teaching health while the other one is teaching PE. So there's really only one class in here at a time. The hard partitions will come out. We're talking about maybe a roll down net across the center that would divide the space in two, and possibly some bleachers, and that's still up for some discussion. But based on the way they're using the space now, and again, they have a large number of bleachers now, but the principal would like if one class could be sat down for an event where maybe the Philly Fanatic comes in or something like that, so she can still do those types of activities.
Quick question, without the bleachers, so is the 5th grade move up is no longer in the gymnasium? Where is that held?
at the stadium.
Is that the stadium? Okay.
I think this was last 2 years.
It was last year, yeah.
Haven't had a 5th grade in a while.
So the administration of Colonial Elementary right now is up on the 2nd floor, and one of the things that we talked about was bringing that down to the 1st floor so that parents or visitors entering the school don't have to walk very deep into the school in order to access it. So that's been relocated to this area in red. And specifically the way that we're proposing it would be laid out. I don't know how far this particular layout has been reviewed, but the idea would be that there would be a couple of people sitting up front behind a reception desk, as is typical for an educational administration area. But by placing them here, they would actually have sight lines to that front vestibule as well. When we talk about getting multiple people being able to have eyes on the front door, the people in the district, in the school office would also have visibility. And any visitor who was entering who would be coming back to that administration would have a door right here that comes straight in. You don't have to lose sight of that person coming through. Waiting area, workroom, offices, conference room, basically the suite is laid out right here. Door to the main lobby, door to the backside right across from the library. So it kind of has a student presence, visitor presence, but really it doesn't matter. People can enter from either side and access that. The district office is in a third of the gymnasium in this gold color here. It would have its own entrance from the outside. On the 1st floor, we're talking about housing human resources and IT. Human resources because it has the majority of the foot traffic coming in and out, and IT because they bring in laptops by the pallet. And just for that reason alone, it would be better to have them on the 1st floor. There'll be a conference room right off the lobby so that visitors don't have to, again, come any deeper than that conference room into the building.
Kevin, if you can just, we also will put registration down there too.
Yes.
So again, with the idea of keeping the people that visit the building the most on the 1st floor and not getting a chance to get deeper into the building.
And you'll see a change in the way that the front is laid out, unlike the way that it is now where there's an open reception desk and there's sort of limited security once you're in the suite. This will be set up more similar to the way that the schools are set up, where there's a person behind glass, there's a secure vestibule. You have to present your driver's license before you're buzzed into the office area. In terms of the school itself, the areas in blue are the additional educational classrooms. I think we also have a couple of toilet rooms in blue here. We're showing 11 full-size classrooms on the 1st floor, plus 3 small group instruction spaces. So I'll point out if there's a small group instruction space here, here, and here. This one would also double as a caucus room for the board. Right now, you're able to meet in the district office in the conference room. This would be a place that you could meet in a small group instruction space. That'll again serve this boardroom, but during the day it can also be used for educational purposes, probably for itinerant people, therapists that would come in that don't necessarily need a permanent home base would be able to work in that same room, so you get double use out of it.
So the idea there, I'm sorry to interrupt again, would be if we are in exec session, we would leave there and still be able to go through this door right here and not have to mix in with the public. So we literally would be right here and then just walking back in that door.
I will point out there's 3 areas in white here that are sort of within that blue area, one here, and one there. Those are mechanical spaces. And we did actually look at the possibility of moving that equipment, but that's not cost there's no cost benefit. That calculation failed. We want to keep those where they are. A lot of that equipment is still usable. We're going to continue to use it, and there's panels in those locations that we don't necessarily want to relocate. One other thing that I'll point out is because we're building new classrooms, we're able to at least ask the question through the rest of the building, are there any classrooms in the current building that aren't working as well as they could? Specifically, are there life skills rooms that don't have toilet rooms associated with them? Or autistic support rooms that will also not have toilet rooms? The suggestion here is that while we're building these rooms, we can build them the way we want them to serve programs that maybe aren't served as well as they could be on the upper levels. So we're talking about moving life skills down here on the first floor, which is a good spot for them, giving them a dedicated toilet room associated with that lab, and having similar spaces for autistic support as part of this design. You don't necessarily have to use the rooms that way every year, but at least you'll be set up to have those spaces available.
And then, Kevin, right before you move to the second floor, I just wanted to mention that also the restrooms and the gym layout now allows the students to go to the bathroom in the gym, where now they have to exit the gym to go across the hall. So again, another good safety feature that they'll actually still be in the gym.
So on the upper level, within the district office, we've developed this, and again, we've had several conversations, mostly Joe has had conversations with department heads talking about the layout of spaces. So what you're seeing here probably has gone through at least 1, 2, maybe 3 revisions for individual departments as you've had a chance to meet with them, and they've considered the layout to make sure that we have everything covered.
So I met with all the department heads, from finance, Mark, obviously, and then Rosemarie and Michelle, and Drew, and Karen, and just went over their existing needs and kind of gave them the layout. We reviewed their storage, reviewed areas that could potentially be improved, and then, we basically, they were all very productive, and we got down to the needs pretty quickly, and we're able to get rid of the wants. And that's why I think we feel pretty good about where the actual schematic now is that we're presenting.
So house on this floor, we have the superintendent's area, curriculum, pupil services, transportation, and finance are all housed on the upper level. The area of the former administration would be divided up as we see it now into 2 classrooms and a series of small group rooms, mostly for reading specialists. Right now, there's 2 rooms up on the second floor that are used by 4 reading specialists. They don't have individual spaces. So the idea here would be to develop it in a way that an instructor working with 5 students has a dedicated space with 4 hard walls around it to work in. So other than that, not a lot of development on the upper floor, just carving up what used to be administration.
And a very, again, lengthy meeting with Dr. Christian and Mrs. Rock to go over the actual building needs and future needs. So pretty comfortable where we are. I don't know, did you want to discuss the shed on the outside?
Yeah. So in terms of what it might look like, we took a preliminary look at what the image on the front of the building might begin to develop into. What you've got now is a gymnasium that's all solid walls. There's no glass, there's no windows. We're obviously putting functions inside of it that would benefit from windows. We're not going to take that wall and carve windows into it. The wall is going to come down and be reconstructed because in this world, we concern ourselves more with time and labor than materials. So it's not worth saving the walls. We're going to take them down and put them back up. The other thing that we have the opportunity here, because we're putting in that floor, that we can kind of cantilever that floor out a little bit. It's getting its own structure, and there's no reason that we can't cantilever that steel out a little further. And I'll explain what I mean when we look at the image. But we're suggesting a new look for the building, basically. You can see off to the left would be the new district offices, and the way that I described before, this building is very 1960s, and I'm sure in 1966 it was a beautiful example.
It's better looking than the middle school.
I second that.
So it was a lovely example, and I don't necessarily mean to change that. We're not going to change it. The building is what it is, but we have an opportunity here to give it a new face, a new look, at least in the area where we're developing it for a district office. And the key to that, in my mind, is the building has this very rigid series of columns that express themselves on the outside. It's a very 1960s thing. They did it constantly, but here we have an opportunity to cantilever that structure. Again, we're building a new structure. It's nothing fancy. Just cantilever it out past the exterior wall. Get past those columns and let that window wall go past and give the building a new expression. We're looking at the expression on the left side for the district office. You can see to the right of the slide, maybe just cover up the existing canopy. And I'm not talking about reconstructing that canopy, and you'll see it in the overhead look when we look down at it. I'm saying generally just float a wall out in front of it and give it a new look. One of the things that we'll have to balance here is as visitors approach this building, there's going to be two entrances on the front. We don't want one to overpower the other. We want them properly labeled. There'll be signage, and you can see here we've introduced, which probably on the left should say Colonial District Office, and on the right, Colonial Elementary School. If somebody gets the wrong entrance, they're only 75 feet apart. It's not that big of a deal. But we're trying with the district office not to make any bigger expression than the school office. Keep them equally weighted.
So just, you talked about a canopy or something over the school entrance.
Yes, this is
So
the
that
existing,
thing sticking out there isn't there now?
that is there. Let me back up one.
That's what I'm
So
saying, like, so what's different?
It's a little hard. Well, I can zoom in on it. So we call in our office kind of a hat channel.
Yeah, it just sticks out and hangs, right?
Right, and it kind of has that profile. It kind of steps up and goes back down, kind of like a corrugated metal deck, almost, only it's site cast concrete. So we're just talking about floating a wall out in front of that and covering it up. I don't want to redo the roof. I don't want to redo the drainage.
Oh, don't
Might give it
touch
some
the
new
roofs.
lighting, but
Right?
just put a shell over it.
Don't touch the roofs.
No. We finally got that T-section sealed. Not the
We don't have buckets anymore. Don't touch the roof.
Not the T-section.
That's right.
I'd also say that we would intend to be respectful to the building in the extent that use the same brick. Where we are introducing brick, make it match. Make it look like it all fits in. We're just going to give it a little bit more of a contemporary face. And you can see as it sort of wraps around the corner, these are the district offices on the second floor. And when we get to the end of the gymnasium and we transition to what the wrestling room is, well, I'm not building a floor there. So it's not easy to cantilever that, to stop that system. We're going to do it where it's easy. And then we're going to switch to a system where we are letting the existing columns remain back here, but we are going to fill in glass. So the offices that are towards the back of that and wrap around the back side, the business office, Mark's office is back in the corner here. That would all get windows just cut in at the top of the brick wall so that they get natural light as well.
Is anything happening to the canopy that sort of was falling down over here on either side?
So if you remember, and that's a good point, if you remember when we had issues with them, it was at the front. And if you remember, we saw cut them back. So structurally, they're okay now. They're not, none of them are, so what we proposed on the two canopies on what we call the north and south side, or the baseball field side and the Flowertown Road side, that's what we call it too. The same thing as we're doing out front, boxing it in. Yep, boxing it. And we said that we would do that as an alternate to see what it costs, so then the board could make decisions on these things. So several things that we're talking about, we can put into alternates. So again, there's an option for you to decide.
What's there now, after you cut the front off each
Right.
of them, is structurally sound if we were to leave it alone?
Yes,
Because that was a problem for years.
yes, correct.
Thanks.
So you can see that canopy covered up here, same thing, and you can kind of see it from above. So it's just basically a simple wall that wraps around and just covers it up in profile. When you go to the underside, you'll still see the same profile on the underside. It just gets a new appearance as you approach it. And then this is up above the existing school canopy. So you can see the profile of it. You can see the wall wrapping around. And our suggestion is that there would be an opportunity while we're cutting in windows to cut in windows to that gymnasium as well. And every space benefits from natural light. As Joe mentioned, we may take a few of these things and make them alternates. It's not a requirement to get natural light into the gym, so we can put a price tag on that separate. The bids come in, you can decide whether that's something you want to do or not something you want to do. I'll also mention, this element on the outside is really the only addition to the building. That's the elevator. And the reason that it has to be outside is that we're working with a limited height to the underside of the steel. We can't modify the trusses that span across the entire gym. So that element really wants to be outside so that it can have its extra runoff, its extra height that it needs to.
And that kind of reminds me of what you did at the front of the high school.
Yeah.
And if you put a flagpole on top and the sign,
Yeah.
it's kind of ties the two buildings together.
At one point, we did move the flagpole over, but then we got into that whole conversation. If you put the flagpole in front of that, it's going to look like the entrance to the building. So right now, it's bolted on the face of the building. Its location will be kind of between the two, and we kind of settled in on maybe it's appropriate to leave that in the middle, and not move. But we were tempted to do the same thing.
I have a quick question.
I just like that it kind of mimics what we have at the high school.
Yeah, it does.
A quick question. So with the addition of the glass, which I'm sure that the district administrators are happy about having windows, as opposed to not, and then the glass on the gym. My question is from a safety perspective, like the type of glass, meaning that someone's trying to get in to the building, that's a threat. How's that protecting the students and the staff? Like that, what type of glass is that?
So
Is this
No,
specifically the
that
glass
glass, the glass that's
the
right
glass
there
is saying to
on
the
at the
windows
gym.
itself.
into the gym?
The gym?
Yeah, it would be,
Down the middle, you can't get to it.
the glass that you're talking about though would be the same glass that we put on the middle school. So it's I forget the exact term for it, but it's there's bulletproof is really, there's no such thing. So we went through that, but you can beat it with a mallet, and it's going to take a while to try and get through to it. So yeah, it'll be protective glass. And we did talk about in the main lobby about maybe that entrance itself doing something different, but that's something with Dr. Christian we've reviewed for all the schools, so we're still in the
But
process.
I think what Gail's talking about, the way it looks
Yeah.
from this angle,
Is that
that
you-
thing going down between the two parts of the building
Right.
is a roof over
That's
the
the T
hallway.
section.
So those windows are on the second
Right.
floor.
Yeah, exactly. That's the second.
On the bullet.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And then we actually, we had video of a guy taking a sledgehammer. It was already cracked when they installed one of the.
Yep, you're right. Yep.
He whacked on that thing like 30 times. And couldn't- obviously, everything. At a minimum that. And then as part of side, as part of by for the main entrance.
Correct.
The second floor glass into the gymnasium has one other concern. It would be on the northeast side of the gym, and we do have to be a little bit careful. We have to look at sun angles. It's very difficult to control glare if you get like direct sunlight through that. So you might see that as translucent glass as well,
Right.
like a stress skin panel that would allow light in that you can't see through. We do that in a lot of gyms.
The whole gym is getting a new.
Well, probably an alternate. I mean, we will find a way to save that floor. We were walking it the other day. It's
Yeah.
not in perfect shape, but it's in pretty good shape.
Yeah.
And
No, we refinished it when they won the state championship. So in 2009, we took it down to bare wood.
But it'll get,
Yeah,
at a
well,
minimum, it'll get cleaned up.
correct. We would go down the bare wood again, get the emblem off, maybe do something with Colonial Elementary School in there, so it doesn't say Colonials, home of the Colonials now, or whatever it says. Yeah.
it'll have to because the gym is shifting over.
Right.
The game lines have to shift over for the fact that a third of the gym has been eliminated. So it's going to have to be sanded down. We can come up with an alternate for a brand new floor, but we were going to make sure that the base bid was keep the floor, sand it down, refinish it, new game lines.
That hardwood floor is, as you guys all know from the other projects, is very expensive, and it's still the best gym floor application. So, we'll do it just so you guys have the option again to make a decision, but if that can be salvaged, it's still the best floor to have there. We are doing AC, correct? Yep. Yep, auditorium too.
Total all the 4 iterations. The maximum classrooms we were gonna get was 18, and the minimum was 12. And this is giving us 16. Is that
We had an
correct?
eight.
It was 18 and 8. Yeah, I think the first
Okay,
number was
so
very
we're
small.
getting on the top end, and so we're getting all the classrooms we need for doing this.
Yep.
The second floor level 2 classrooms, the 2 that are made there, do they have natural light too, or are they? Because they're right there, right?
Right. So they'll get some from actually, again, the shades that we have here can be lifted where they are up there. So you'll get some, as you can see. But again, it's not an absorbent amount, but you're not boxed in either.
Okay. Yeah. So,
Oh, I'm sorry.
yeah, those 2. In the
Oh,
middle, yeah.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, he's talking about them too,
Yeah,
Ken.
right.
They get whatever.
So if, and again, we can ask more questions, but tentatively, what we're hoping and what we feel we're on schedule for now is a December advertising. Well, let me go back. We're hoping to get you a budget. We will have you a budget we will have it sometime in September, but we'll present it to you in October because we won't have it for the September 5th FMT. That's a little too close. But we'll have a budget for you first, but with the goal of advertising in late December, hopefully before the winter break, with a bid opening in January and then a board approval in February.
Where does, I know with past projects, you've always talked about how important it is when you go out to bid to get the most bidders. Is that optimal timing?
You want to? We
Yeah,
just had this conversation, so I
I
apologize.
think what you want to avoid is bidding in February, March,
Right.
especially when you want a lot done over the summer. I think this should be a very attractive project in that we're not asking them to get anything done in the first summer. There's some things they have to do. They have to separate educational spaces from workspaces, but they don't have to deliver a finished classroom or any occupied space by the end of the summer. So, yeah,
But I mean, in terms of getting people to bid because they have open time for when you're going
January is
to
a
want
very
them to work.
comfortable time to bid. You don't really want to bid in March.
Okay.
March, April's windows start to fill in, especially for summer.
Okay, great.
I'm sorry?
There's no push.
Do you want to tell them
I
our
think it's
debate?
going to be a push to get it out in December. It's a pretty sizable job, and I mean, it's fine. It's a reasonable schedule, but I don't know that we're going to be able to shorten.
I am giving him my full court press for December. So he knows. So we arm wrestled. We haven't decided who won yet, but I'm trying December because I believe, just again, psychological of where, having grown up in the construction world, if you're a summer work person, they still look at jobs when the year turns around, but they're bidding heavily and competitively in those first 4 months of the year.
Well,
I
we know
agree
you.
with Kevin that you'll still
We
get a
know
good
you can
number.
do it, Kevin.
Well, that's what
It
we're
sounds like
saying.
it's a
We'll
long
get it
way
out.
off.
That exactly. We'll get
It's
it
not.
out. This summer.
But I really like the exterior design, like
Thank you.
to take this not great looking building, you've really spruced it up with those windows and that facade, and it really looks cool. Way better than I would have expected it could look.
We're very excited about it. And when we come back, we'll show you developed versions. We're seeing those pieces as metal panel, but there's some debate in our own office about what type of metal panel. So we'll bring you some options or our recommendation that'll look like next time.
We really like it. No land development.
Yep.
No land
It
development.
keeps the TO on the main campus by the high school and 2 of the largest buildings in the district. Creates a clear separation, creates a safer environment. Yes. And it maximizes unused space.
I mean, using the wrestling room and all that area upstairs, which has sat vacant since you did the high school. Like, it's just amazing to use that space.
It keeps our traffic around the building nice. Doesn't impact the covenant back here. Past Kevin and Joe with a lot.
Doesn't touch the non-leaking roofs.
I'm sorry? Which
It doesn't touch the roofs, which are not leaking at the moment, so.
Right, well, they're There might be a couple pieces of equipment that land up there, but
Did I make you angry? This is the second roof. I'm sorry, whatever I did.
What, 20 years we had buckets in the hall?
I know, but we don't now, so I want to keep it that way. Exactly.
Right, Chris.
But if there's no more questions, that was the only, I think Mark has something on the second item on the agenda, which is a transportation item. So I'll turn it over to you, Mark. Sure, absolutely.
Sorry. The side entrance, where the school entrance, is that,
this one over here, or
no, I'm sorry, the office, the official school entrance that we'll have for where people are.
for the school or the
Yes,
district?
for the school.
School, right over here.
They still have to park in the front and then walk down the side, right?
Yeah.
Okay, is there,
Parking.
huh?
No,
Staying in the front.
Oh, you're not,
no, we're not doing that.
It's just, there's too many, too many, forgot my lunch, got my speakers, whatever. Now people park and walk down here, right down here. And it interrupts the traffic flow. Plus we close that off during recess, safety reasons.
right, okay, okay.
Kevin.
Gotcha.
They'll still park here and walk in.
Yeah, and if you go to that first floor schematic,
We did
please.
look at that as an option, though. We can't get away from that.
So that's what we were saying, and walk. And then having school administrator or someone to then say, oh, I forgot my, or my child. Everything would
Coming up for an IP meeting.
right. So this
Yes.
is a shorter walk. Okay, this is the whole part.
And move up.
Yeah, we're. All right, thank you, Kevin.
Thank you.
Thanks, Kevin. Good job.
Thanks.
Yeah, I think that's an impressive job by everyone involved, so narrowing it down. Transportation RFP, is that?
Yeah, there's one other item on the agenda. The current busing contract with first student expires August of 2024. So in order to get ahead of, sorry about that. The current busing contract with first student expires August of 2024, so the end of next school year. And in order to get a jump on getting a new contract out there with potentially a new busing service company or a renewal with first student, we want to get the committee's authorization to put together a request for proposal. This is something we would work on over the next month or so, looking to get it out either the end of August, beginning of September. The earlier we can get this out, the earlier we can get the bids back, we can review, we can lock in our busing contract. We're going to put it out for at least 5 years. That's the initial thought. But I'll talk to Dr. Christian and a couple of other administrators, Christopher Brown in transportation, and see what his thoughts are on potentially going out maybe 7 years. But we just would like the committee's authorization to start putting that together. Okay, great. Thank you very much.
Any public comment on the meeting? Board comment.
Yeah, Joe's not gonna like my question. What are you doing about that non-grass, muddy, dirty field at the middle school?
I had a really lengthy meeting today, about 90 minutes with Jim Kiefer and Penn Builders. So we developed a plan today. I'm just waiting for John Swartley to put it in writing. But again, we plan on tending to it and getting grass to grow. I can tell you that part of it is, part of it is the dry, hot weather that we did experience. And it's not all of it. There's definitely a problem there. But I can tell you only because I spoke with our insurance rep, because as you know, it was an OSEP, an owner-controlled insurance policy. So when I spoke with him about closing out the project, I said, well, I'm a little bit leery about the whole project, and here's why. And he said, we have that in like 3 other projects right now. So it made me feel a little bit better, but we do have a problem here a little bit. But we did have a very productive meeting about, again, no cost to the district, obviously, and getting that in shape. We are confident that our fall sports, we only have to move like 2 sports that will still use Plymouth in the fall to allow that to grow, with the goal that we'll be playing on it in the spring no matter what. So we've talked with Plymouth Rec. We've talked with the administration at the middle school. So Mike Lau and Sean are, but they were ecstatic that they only need one bus to go to Plymouth Rec this year, so they were happy.
So you say that we will get it up and running. That was a field that the builders were supposed to produce.
Correct, and they will get it. I say we, it's they.
So they're going to do it, not your guys?
Yes, I'm sorry. I mean we because we're all in it, but yes.
No, I know, but I know that the turf looks wonderful.
Right.
I mean, where you put the sod in.
Yes.
Yeah, it looks wonderful.
Sod looks wonderful because we took care of the sod.
Right. That's my point. So, but this will look as good by spring a year?
It better. Right.
Well, we're still holding money.
Plenty.
Enough to turf that field?
Plenty.
Sod that field,
Sod
sorry.
that field. Yes.
Okay. No, not turf,
And
sod.
again, I will say, Penn Builders has been very stand-up, and they're not ducking their responsibility at all. So that's the good news in what's going on here. We're just trying to figure out the best way to do it. And when we recognized that it wasn't growing, we kind of got to the point like you're in that season where it's difficult to grow grass. So it was almost like anything we would have done in June or July or even late May would have really been wasting our money and gained more frustration because nothing would have grown.
I mean, I think I told you, I got a call from somebody who lives across the street from that field who just said they wouldn't hire whoever did that
Yeah.
to do their little lawn because it was so poorly done. Are they going to be the same people?
No, the landscaper that's going to do it, Penn's using a different landscaper to help them out on this. So, again, we were confident. It was a good meeting. It was definitely, it had its moments because they know we're not happy. So it was not a hold hand type meeting, but it was productive. And again, I will have it all documented for us. Right. I told him. So if that's it, I think that's the last item on the agenda.
Sorry. Seeing no public comment during this meeting, I'll go right to the next one.
Thank you.
Bob. How do I get this? No way to zoom in.
Do I go back?
Oh yeah, I can read it.
Bill Brady and Sean Mazie, and, they're see film exception and stuff. Like he's like, all right, he really has something. His innovation.
No, it's not. Don't worry about it. It's fine. Yeah, I have to operate over here. The cables aren't working. Have a good night. See you tomorrow.
I'd like to call to order the Finance Committee meeting. Is there any public comment on the agenda? Seeing none, I turn it over to Mark.
Thank you, Mr. Carpenter. Okay, 3 items on the agenda tonight. We're going to go over the fiscal school year that just ended June of 2023, as well as look at the new school year 2023-2024, as well as talk about the general obligation bonds for CES. The first item is the general fund budget comparison for June of 2022 to June of 2023. This is going to encompass the entire fiscal year or school year 2022-2023. These numbers are what we call unaudited, as our local independent CPA firm will be in the end of September, end of October to review our numbers. But I'm fairly confident from my work and my team's work that we're going to be somewhat in the ballpark of where these numbers are represented. To start, we're going to look at the revenues. Local revenues came in for the year at $122,367,316. Yes. I wish I could. I don't know how to. I don't think I can do it from here, to be honest. I apologize. It's just something from this monitor we can't zoom in if it was on the laptop. But you know what? We'll get to the next slide. I can show you in a second. So when we're looking at local revenues, like I said, 122 million came in, and compared to a budget of 117 million. And when we're talking about our revenue analysis, we look at our current real estate taxes, which makes up about 65% of our total revenues, and then everything else, which encompasses transfer taxes, earned income taxes, delinquent, interims, real estate, other local revenues, state, federal, and our IDA program. As you can see, current real estate taxes came in at about $97,512,000, an increase of about $2.5 million from the prior year. An increase of 2.68%. Now, it's cumulative of assessment changes as well as the tax rate that was increased in the prior year. We're very fortunate to have the tax base that we have and strong, tax revenues. Like I said, that makes up about 65% of our total cash inflow for the year. Transfer taxes, we spoke about them during the year just because of the downturn in the 22-23 year compared to the as much activity as we had in the prior year. We're a little bit lower, 366,000 in the prior year, about 9% lower, but again, still very strong numbers for transfer taxes. Our earned income taxes came in at about $12,119,000, an increase of $719,000. Very strong numbers. We're very fortunate to have, the work base, that we have within our district. Delinquent taxes and interim taxes, also, again, tied to that transfer tax. We're starting to see the downturn in the turnover of properties, not just from residential, but then also commercial. Our other local revenues, which consist of tuition billings to other LEAs for our students, interest income, and a couple other, various local other revenues are $2 million higher than prior year, sitting at about $5.2 million. State revenue came in about $25,315,000, an increase of $1,893,000. And our federal revenue came in at about $1.4 million, which was a decrease of $973,000. If you think about it from a COVID standpoint, there were numerous COVID grants that came out those first couple of years. We are now winding those down, or we have wound those down, and now we're working on our last COVID ARP ESSER money. So that's why you're going to see a decrease in the federal revenue. Next year, it'll be even less because, again, we're spending all this COVID money down, and we have to have that all spent by next year. So that's just going to be a function of dollars we spend, dollars we recognize as revenue. So an IDEA, again, another strong program that we have that's administered by the Special Education Department, came in with revenues of $992,000. an increase of about $31,000. So looking at revenues from a year-to-year analysis, like I said, they came in at about $149,115,801, an increase of almost $2.9 million or 1.98%. Again, these numbers are all unaudited, but I'm very confident in these numbers, and I believe that these numbers will stand as we continue to review our numbers, and then even when the auditors come. So that's obviously the one side of the coin is our revenues, and then getting back to the other side when we talk about our expenditures or our expenses. We have wages. Wages came in at about $63,625,231, 96.9% of our budget. Now, when you compare that to the prior year of $61,796,000, it's about a 2.96% increase, which, as you know, we are contractually obligated to adhere to our collective bargaining increases, and those effect of those increases plus a few retirements gets us to about the 2.96% increase. So again, they came in line with what we were expecting in terms of that. Benefits, as the board knows, we did utilize our fund balance over at the Healthcare Consortium for what we call the December premium holiday. That's why you see a large decrease compared to the prior year of $38.8 million. We were sitting at $37.4 million. Again, it was that 1 month of premium holiday that was, we were very fortunate to take advantage of. Professional services, as much as it is a material number, is $7.4 million. It is comparable to prior year. Special education, litigation settlements, counseling, professional service expenditures, obviously push those current year expenditures past our budget. Also the need just to make sure we had the appropriate professionals in our building from staffing perspectives, as well as supplementing our classrooms with additional aides was the driving factor in our professional services. As far as the 400 object goes, which is our repairs and maintenance, we invested in numerous roofing, HVAC projects. The one at Conshohocken, of course, is a big one. Chromebook repairs, sidewalk repairs. These are projects that Joe Lally identified throughout the year that we have to invest in the district to maintain and keep things up to speed. And me and him work very closely on what projects we want to tackle, prioritizing. But that was obviously a very sizable number this year compared to the prior year. But again, something we just make sure we're investing in our district. As far as the 500 object goes, this is where we find our special education tuition costs. We've been talking about this over the last few months, is that, with our increased enrollment in special education students, we're seeing increased tuition factors, as well as the transportation of those students, related to their specific IEPs. All those numbers getting thrown at you. Okay. Supplies. This is where we look to see our textbooks, instructional supplies. The driving factor here in the prior year was about $5.4 million, and we're sitting at about $5 million this year. Again, this is a COVID-related idea. In prior years, we were buying more PP&E. This most recent year, we really scaled back on the PP&E purchases, so a lot less dollars spent in terms of supplies. Equipment, we've talked about that in previous meetings, where we had to pay for the cost of the vehicles and the mowers, to make sure we're in accordance with PD. So we moved those dollars back over the general fund. And our other objects, which is 800 object, this is where we see our interest payments, but then this is also where we see the effect of the assessment appeals. Any assessment appeals in which are not in our favor, we have to return that money. And because it was revenue we collected in a prior year, we book it to this account. So the effect of those settlements for this year was $849,783. It was a big hit, but this is something that we expected as we were working through our assessments with our attorneys as well as the other parties. And then the other use of fund 900 is our debt service payment. Came in on budget, and again exactly where we expected it. So again, unaudited numbers when we're talking about fund balance. We did reserve $1 million in terms of fund balance. And it looks like right now we're sitting at about $225,961 deficit. So of the million we reserved, we're looking like we're going to eat away at about only $225,000. Again, these are, like I said, unaudited numbers, but I'm very confident. I'm very strong, with what these numbers represent. And I think next month when we have more finalized numbers, you're going to see a lot of comparison. When we look at, real quick, just to look at expenditures, again, as we talk about, wages and benefits are always the highest driving factor. As we talked about, the wages is up 2.96%, which is essentially the contractually obligated increases per the bargaining units, and then benefits. Again, those two line items themselves make up about 71% of our overall budget. So this is, a graph. If anybody would like to look over it, we can talk about it at length. But it basically summarizes and picturizes what we just spoke about. This is a new chart. Actually, I kind of thought was pretty interesting. When we look at the financials of the school district, they're broken up into 4 categories: instructional, support services, community services, which is student activities and student athletics, and then other use of funds, which is our debt service payments and our refund of assessment appeals. What we want to see from year to year is consistency. We don't want to see big swings. We want to, stay flat at where we are. And from an instructional standpoint, you can see in prior year, our overall expenditures were about 58.2%. And in the current year, they're sitting at 58.6%. So not only is it comparable, but it's trending in the right way from an instructional standpoint. We want to see more dollars in instructional than we would want to see in, use of other funds or even some of the support services. But I thought that this was, something that was, just puts a real picture as to where the dollars are going from a perspective of type of expenditure. So like I said, as of now, the 2022-23 year is looking at a deficit of $225,000, but is mitigated by the $1 million that we had set aside of part of our fund balance to help offset the budget. We will have more finalized numbers once the auditors come in, but I'm fairly confident in where these numbers are right now. Any questions? We have $750,000 to allocate to other projects as deemed necessary. Yep.
So, just to clarify, the transfer to capital reserve projects, is that pre-planned, or is that the logic on that, how we end up with the deficit versus the excess revenue over expenses?
So that was not planned. That was a factor of the fact that our general fund budget was in excess of the 8% requirement by PDE at the beginning of the year. And we identified, I think it was 6.5 million. And we went, I think it was like 6.5 and change, and we took 6.75 and we had to move it. That was not a planned expenditure. That was the effect of the prior year fund balance rolling in. And then we had to adhere to PDE's policy. Yeah, so that money went over to the capital reserve account.
But it's not money that went out the door yet. It's money we moved out of the general.
We still have it. Those dollars are still within our fund balance. So when a rating agency looks at the district, they look at not just the general fund, but then also capital reserve. So I show them the general fund, but then I also show them the capital reserve, and I show them the capital projects. It's a part of the global picture. Those dollars are still in with us.
So that capital reserve is a designated fund balance account.
Yeah, it's Fund 32. It's what myself and Mr. Lally and Dr. Christian used to either help identify funding for projects construction-wise, or as we've talked about with the CES renovations, if we want to use some of that money to backfill on that project, because even though we approved $15 million, and I'd love for the project to come in at $15 million, probably won't be just $15 million, but we have that bucket of money over there if we decide to go that route.
So in a residential theory, our checking account lost $225,000, but our savings account has $6.75 million more than when we started the year.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So that's how 22-23 is shaping up.
Yeah, we've planned for the savings account. Yeah.
Okay. So with that being said, we'll move into the current fiscal year for the month ended July 2023. Again, we're only 1 month into the new school year, the new fiscal year. Not a lot of activity outside of our two first payrolls. Our two first payrolls were processed, in July with the associated changes to the employee contracts for the bargaining units. Benefits are being processed in association also with the wages as they are being paid out. Professional services, the 300 line item, there are professional developments being supplied to teachers and administrators during the summer to get them ready for the coming school year. And then the rest, 400s through 900s, basically are falling in line with what expectations would be for during the summer. We're going out, we're buying our supplies, we're buying our computers, we're bringing in all the instructional needs that we have. The one item I did want to point out, though, is on the line 700 for equipment. You'll see that for the current year, we have $293,722. We did new overhead PA systems at Conshohocken and Ridge Park this year. Both were performed by Z&H and both are completed. So those were projects identified by Mr. Bogley in the IT department. So that was a good investment as far as equipment goes for that. But that was a much larger line item than what we'd have expected in prior years. But that's the only reason why that one is as higher as it is right now. The one thing I did want to point out from a revenue standpoint, as everybody can imagine in the news right now, is that the Pennsylvania Commonwealth was yet as of earlier this afternoon to pass their budget. Now, there was an appropriation bill that was moved over to Governor Shapiro's desk late this afternoon. He needs to recall the legislators back and get them on board. We don't know how that's going to shake out yet as far as where the dollar is going to go from a line item perspective. We just know that he has the total bill, basically. But as it stands right now, Colonial School District, just like every other school district in the state of Pennsylvania, is not receiving any state funding. It's not that we're not going to get it, we're just delayed. Now, we are also very fortunate to have, very strong tax base. So our real estate taxes that we've collected, the $9.7 million, is adding to our cash accounts. It's helping us pay bills, and we will continue to collect our strong real estate tax revenues. So we are not going to be in as dire straits from a cash flow perspective as some other school districts. But I just wanted to at least point out that right now, in this environment that we're in without a state budget, we are operating based off our own dollars here. That's as far as the revenue goes. And expenditures, again, wages and benefits are just being processed in accordance with our normal payrolls. And that line item for equipment, the $287,000, is the PA overheads at Conshohocken and Ridge Park.
We're still pending 2 vans. Wasn't the budget larger for this year because you have 2 van replacements coming? Yeah.
There were 2 additional facility vans that were budgeted for. We have not bought either one of those yet. I know Joe Lally does send Gene out from time to time to go look at things. If he sees something that he would like. We did purchase the security truck though. That's over at FMC. Joe just got the new security stickers on the side of it. It looks really sharp. He's going to get the lights on top of it too. It's going to stick out as a security truck. It won't blend in with the facilities or turf. It's apparent it's security. It will only be used for security. You'll see it around the vents. You'll see it around the parking lots. But yeah, we were able to jump on that about a month ago. Yeah. Any questions on the current month right now? Again, this is first month kickoff. We're still trying to make our way through. Okay. The last item is just an informational item. As the board recalls, back in June, you authorized the administration to work with our financing team, PFM Financing Advisors, as well as the bond counsel at Raymond James for the first $15 million to seed money we talked about for CES. Over the last month and a half, we've been working with them. I just kind of wanted to provide the committee with an update as well as a schedule. So this Monday, August 7th, I have a phone call with Moody's Investment Services. Our team will also be on the phone call, but Moody's is going to come in, evaluate the district, and we're going to discuss, we're going to discuss the budget, our financials, our real estate, our strength and our growth, in our tax base, and then we'll also discuss our AAA rating. We are expecting a favorable outcome, but that'll be August 7th, so Monday's phone call. On August 24th, at the school board meeting, the board will vote on the parameters for the resolution for the 2023 general obligation bonds. That's a formal signing. We'll have the team here from PFM. They'll walk us through, all our due diligence and the paperwork that needs to get completed. That following Tuesday, They'll look to go out and put the bonds out to market. They'll look to lock in our interest rates. They'll look to see how attractive the market is. And then we expect the settlement and the proceeds of the bonds to come somewhere around the end of September. But I just wanted to make sure we update the community as to where we are and how that's progressing. And we're still on target for getting that money now. As everybody's probably seen in the news right now, the Fed just keeps increasing rates. And while you think that would have an effect on municipal bond rates, it really hasn't moved the bubble. So we're still looking at those borrowing rates where we're expecting, but we're also looking at an increase in the savings rate. So when we're looking at a conservative 3.5% earning on our money, it's probably going to be closer to 5.25, 5.5. So that's going to be very attractive when that money starts rolling in, when we can go get that, and then the interest earnings on that one. So, any questions on the schedule for CES? That is my presentation.
I just want to thank Mark. He and I should have said this during FMT. In addition to being on top of all the financials, he and Christopher Brown have been meeting regularly in person and on Zoom and on the phone with First Student and Wolfington and SAG for our bus drivers. And we are cautiously optimistic based upon the numbers we're receiving. It's First Student is claiming they have the number we need, plus a few extra. SAG has been great to us over the years, and now Wolfington's in play. If your board remembers, they helped out last spring at the middle school with activity trips, and they're willing to do another, 4 or 5 runs for us.
They said that they would commit up to 7 drivers, which may include 5 large bus drivers. They're still working through some of their logistics, but they're willing to come on board on a full-time basis for our daily runs, not just the activity ones, as Dr. Christian had said. So
better, close to the numbers where we want to be with a couple subs. So we'd like to have more, but I appreciate Mark and Christopher staying on top of them. And they just went as recently as last week over to First Student. And those face-to-face meetings carry a lot of weight.
So is that looking hopeful that we'll have enough activity buses in the fall to cover the sports trips and not having parents drive the kids to meets and things like that?
That's the plan. Obviously, with rainouts and things like that, that's a last resort if we can't.
No, I know,
Yeah.
but it looks better, like for that then.
It does look better. Plus, RJ and Mike Lyle are working closely together to try to avoid duplicate days. When rain hits, it's sometimes unavoidable, but try to schedule on off days, those types of things. And then before we would ask parents to do it, we've also done, as the board knows, we've even gone to Werner or some of the coach buses. As frustrating it is sometimes to ask parents and guardians to help out, it's better than canceling. And that's what some of our neighboring districts just simply do. They just cancel. So if we can get at least most of the season in, that's really important for our kids. The fall and the winter are generally less problematic than the spring, just because that's when people use their personal time, vacation time, attrition kicks in, the number of rainouts, the number of activities. Think about spring sports versus winter sports. And it's also when all the field trips are. It's just March through May, end of May are the toughest times.
Any other further discussion? Any public comment? All right, seeing none, this meeting is adjourned.
Thank you.